Jidahe Barron, RJ Harvey, Pat Bryant, they're getting all the love because the Denver Broncos absolutely cleaned up with those draft picks. But the sneakiest and maybe the quietest and best pick of this entire draft happened when George Payton and Sean Payton traded back up into the third round to get an absolute brilliant addition to this team. In this video, we were breaking down why it was the sneakiest, best move of the entire draft, getting Sai'vion Jones. We're breaking down a wild rumor about Shadeur Sanders perhaps becoming a Denver Bronco if the draft played out differently. That and way more in this video. If you're new to the channel, I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan named Ben. Helps me and the algorithm out a lot if you would just smash that like and subscribe button. So diving in here, the Broncos had their third round was almost over, right? And we got Pat Bryant, the future Michael Thomas, that people were saying we reached for until they actually watched film on him. And the Broncos maneuvered back in without even giving up that much. And we come out with Sai'vion Jones. Now, one of the things that just jumps off the page to him is his RAS score. So you are looking here that he was 163 out of the over 2,000 defensive ends who've ever tested when it comes to size, speed, explosiveness, all of that kind of stuff. So you were talking that he's not only in the top 1% of all defensive ends ever tested, you were talking that he's in the top 0.08% of all defensive ends ever tested. And when you compare that, like he's got the physical traits too, he's got an insanely high motor. George Payton came out afterwards and said the thing that sticks out to him was that he goes 110 miles per hour each and every play. So he's going to fit in perfectly with our defense and how this defense plays. And you remember there were a couple times last year where Zach Allen was a little gimpy getting up and you were like, oh no, what's going to happen? How are we going to stop the run? This all hinges here. We have JFM, Malcolm Roach, Zach Allen, and now Sai'vion Jones in there. This is going to be wild. We're going to take a look at what some other teams across the NFL were saying about him. But again, when you are talking about the Broncos making smart choices, they have all of these connections to every single player that they picked. And one of the crazy things about this pick was that our current defensive line coach liked him enough that he was the one pounding the table saying, go and get him. Because the reason that Sai'vion Jones even went to LSU in the first place was because Jamar Cain, who's our current defensive line coach, coached him back then and then was able to tell Sean Payton and George Payton, this dude is going to hit. And so it's one thing, like, you know, there are a lot of times where teams just draft, you know, it's kind of an auto draft, like in your fantasy group, and you just luck into something. The Broncos have all these connections, like, oh, this is Vance Joseph's cousin, and he says this about this dude. And, oh, Jim Leonard was part of the Illini group that got Pat Bryant. And I love that. That's how you know these picks are going to hit. But don't take our word for it. Obviously, George Payton could make up a lot of great sounding stuff. Take a look at what other teams are saying. So this is Dom, who covers the New York Jets. He actually was at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, and he wanted the New York Jets to get him in the second round and came and just did this awesome interview. Dom is a guy who actually had on this channel before the Broncos mollywopped the Jets last year and was pounding the table. I was watching his draft coverage of it, and he was bummed when he saw him go off of it because at the Senior Bowl, we're going to take a look at some clips where Sai'vion Jones just absolutely demolishes these guys. And you were talking about he's playing up against the best that that class had to offer. And he's playing up against an offensive line made of a lot of first-round draft picks. And I think that's an absolutely a phenomenal thing. So we're looking at a guy who has the size and athleticism, as we saw at that RAS score, and the fact that his former coach was the one banging the table for him, I think is phenomenal, knowing that each and every year that he was in college, he took monumental leaps forward, and in his last year had more pressures and tackles than he had in the previous years all combined, which just shows you we haven't seen the ceiling for him yet, that he is currently developing. So don't take Dom's word for it. Don't take my word for it. How about Brian Baldinger, who actually played guard for the Dallas Cowboys, who before the draft even happened said, hey, this dude is going to be stinking good, right? So he does these breakdowns that I absolutely love. LSU. And he breaks down this exact same thing. You're looking at him playing in the SEC against some of the biggest grain-fed boys that you've ever seen and just absolutely able to bulldoze through there. So it's like all this talk on Twitter about 100 men versus one gorilla. You give me Sai'vion Jones against a gorilla, and good luck to that gorilla. You see absolute power and a motor on there that George Payton is commenting on, and Brian Baldinger saying, yeah, this should probably be a second-round draft pick, and the Broncos were able to trade back in at the very, very end of the third-round draft for that. So, again, we are making our basically making our strength always be our strength. So here's the Senior Bowl, and you see him He's able to line up at end, and George Payton and Sean Payton talked about how he can line up. He has versatility across that entire line, so that he is going to be able to be at the end, and he's able to be in the middle too. But he comes out and talks about he is every guard's worst nightmare, and that's, you want to talk about how you rattle Patrick Mahomes. I mean, look at that. That is against the nation's best right here at the Senior Bowl. You just see him bulldoze like turnstiles wide open there, and you see incredible pass rush moves and an incredible amount of strength out of him. Here's what he had to say when he was at the Senior Bowl about what he thinks he brings to a team, and he said,
I'm the interior guard's worst nightmare, you know. A 6'5", 280-pound person who's still agile as any other defensive end. I mean,
I'm an interior guard's worst nightmare, a 6'5" dude who's still versatile, has an incredible motor to him. I think this is going to age extremely well for us. And even just seeing people who weren't totally high on the pick when we got him, just saying like 280 pounds, 6'6", this is going to be helping keep this defensive line good this year and from now on. And as we talk about just the additions that we saw in the AFC West this year, we know they're going to want to run the ball a lot more with the Vegas Raiders and getting Ashton Genty. We saw how Harbaugh beefed up that offensive line, getting Becton there, getting Najee Harris, but then also getting Hampton. And so the question is, like, we are going to need a beefy front seven there, and knowing that we now have depth to that if Malcolm Roach, if Zach Allen goes down, if John Franklin Meyer goes down, or we could just have packages where you just goal line, you throw him on there, and even Ashton Genty, even Omarion Hampton are not going to bust through that. And I think the fact that you're hearing Baldinger say it, you're seeing other creators who did mock drafts and actually talked to some of these guys say, man, I'm bummed that we didn't get him. I think this is awesome. Again, this happened again before the draft, was talking about this guy talent like this doesn't grow on trees. This was a couple days before the NFL draft happened, and you're seeing this not only at the Senior Bowl, but you're seeing it all the way back when he was playing at LSU. And for being that big, watch how fast he's off the ball. Like, that isn't normal. So he can play on the edge like that and crazy amounts of speed. It honestly kind of reminds me of DeAndre Tillman there, in that he can play interior and he has the muscle to take the interior guard, but then he also has that speed to get off across the, I mean, it might be hard to get off against the Kansas City line because they get to go like 4 seconds before the ball snaps, but we'll cover that later. But feeling absolutely incredible about the defensive additions that the Broncos were able to add this year, knowing that Jidahe Barron, now all of Broncos country, I think, has watched enough to film to know that we got the most versatile corner in this entire draft, and that he kind of is the joker of the defense, that he can play out wide, he can play the slot, he can play in the box, out of the box, he can roam as safety, just be a playmaker. And I think this is going to be an incredible season for our secondary, and I can't wait to see what nickname this secondary comes up with, and I think we're going to be good for a long, long time. And it's not just like we're good now because we made the playoffs last year, and nobody can doubt that we got better this offseason, and we got better at a faster rate than anyone else in the AFC West, and no one's debating that. But in addition to that, look at the amount of cap space that we have, because we are fully off of the Russell Wilson dead cap next year. And so looking at the Broncos are going to have $70 million next year and then $140 million the year after. So we're going to be able to keep a Benito or keep a Zach Allen, keep a John Franklin Meyer, and still continue to have great draft after great draft. And I think that's wild. Last thing we got to dive into here, and I'm very, very curious what all y'all think as ball knowers in Broncos country. A rumor came out. This guy has a blue check mark and has a lot of followers and has a national brand. I've actually never heard of him, but this was backed up by some others who said that if Shadeur Sanders didn't get drafted, that the Broncos had reached out to him about becoming an undrafted free agent and coming to Denver. Do you think that is absolute malarkey and there's no way that is the case? I don't think there's any chance that Sean Payton actually thought he was going to compete with Bo Nix for the starting job. We've got our franchise quarterback, and I know Sean knows that as well. I could see this happening because of what Sean Payton said and kind of what he said to Zach Wilson last year. My job is to help you get a ton of money, whether it's here or whether it's at your next place. I could see a world where Sean Payton is so good at developing quarterbacks and wants that to be his reputation that maybe he truly did have plans to bring in Shadeur as a favor to Dion, knowing that they share a city and they're both head coaches here. But I think that's probably absolute malarkey, but let me know in the comments. Do you think there's any way that the Broncos, had Shadeur fallen just a couple more rounds, which is wild, that the Broncos would have brought him here? I'm thankful that didn't happen. I didn't want that media circus. I do think Shadeur Sanders will be decent as a quarterback, but glad that didn't happen. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Other thing, we got rookie minicamp. Guys, it's here. Like, we go rookie minicamp, and then we have off-season OTAs, then we got training camp, and then we got preseason. Like, we got the schedule release coming up. We have our entire season right in front of us, and I can hardly wait for it. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to this channel so you don't miss a single second of it, because Broncos country, we got a ton to believe in. I felt so good.